"Sir, she's just a child," the woman shouted, her voice trembling as the tall man in the sleek charcoal suit turned away, disgust painted across his perfect face. "Then someone should teach her how to behave," he said coldly, his accent sharp, his words slicing through the early morning air like winter wind. "Running around my property, covered in dirt, looking like—" He stopped, his gaze lowering. The little girl stood frozen at the marble entrance of the billionaire's mansion. Her small, shaking hands clutched a torn photograph against her chest, her shoes soaked and smeared with mud. She couldn't be older than 9. Her dress was scorched near the hem, blackened by something that looked like ash. She looked up at him, eyes wide, dark, terrified. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to come here," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The billionaire scoffed. "Sorry doesn't fix trespassing. Do you know whose house this is?" She shook her head slowly. He sighed, pulling his phone from his pocket. "Call security," he muttered to his assistant. "And maybe a social worker. Whatever this is, I don't want it near my property." The girl's lip quivered. Her small hands tightened around the photo. "Please, sir," she pleaded, taking a hesitant step forward. "I just needed somewhere safe." The billionaire turned, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Safe? This isn't a shelter. Look at you. Mud on your shoes, soot on your face. What are you even running from, child?" She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out, only tears. The assistant, a woman in her late 30s named Clara, frowned at her boss. "Mr. Grant, maybe we should just—" "Clara, please. I have a board meeting in 20 minutes. I don't have time for this." He gestured toward the trembling girl, like she was a problem to be solved, not a person. That's when the girl's knees gave out. She collapsed on the cold steps, clutching the photograph tighter. The billionaire froze. For a second he saw something raw in her eyes, desperation, loss. Then he brushed it away. He'd seen too many sob stories, too many people trying to take advantage of his kindness, back when he still had some to give. He walked past her, his polished shoes clicking against the marble, the sound echoing between the mansion's tall columns. Clara knelt beside the girl. "Honey, what's your name?" "Amara," she whispered. "Amara, do you have parents? Someone we can call?" The little girl shook her head. "No, I only have him." She held up the torn photograph. Clara looked closer. It was a picture of a smiling little boy, no older than 5, holding a paper airplane. The edges were singed. Clara's heart tightened. "Who's he?" "My brother," Amara said softly. "He's still inside." Clara blinked. "Inside? Where, sweetie?" The girl's lips trembled. "The orphanage." Before Clara could speak again, the distant sound of sirens filled the air. Mr. Grant's expression hardened. "Oh, wonderful. The circus is coming." The sound grew louder. A fire truck roared past the mansion gates, its red lights flashing through the morning fog. Amara's eyes widened. She turned and ran toward the gate. "Hey, wait!" Clara called, running after her. But Mr. Grant stayed still, watching her small figure sprint across the vast green lawn. Something deep inside him, something buried long ago, twitched. He remembered a night decades ago, a younger version of himself, standing outside a burning apartment building, watching as his father's business partner turned his back on them. He had learned then, money changes people. It makes them cold. It makes them forget. But he didn't forget. He just built walls tall enough that no one could ever climb them again. Now, as that little girl ran through his gates, those walls began to crack. "Sir, should I stop her?" one of the guards asked. He hesitated. "No, let her go." Clara turned, her eyes fierce. "You can't just let her run like that, sir. She's terrified." Mr. Grant's jaw tightened. "She's not my responsibility." Clara's voice dropped. "Maybe not, but she's someone's little girl." He turned away, but her words followed him like a shadow. Back inside the mansion, he tried to focus on his meeting, his stocks, his empire. Anything but that trembling voice saying, "I just needed somewhere safe." But it didn't work. Minutes later, he found himself looking out the window toward the city skyline. In the distance, black smoke was rising. His hand gripped the edge of his desk. He didn't understand why, but his heart started to race. "Clara," he called, his voice suddenly unsteady. "Get the car." "What for?" "Just do it." Outside, the city trembled with noise and fire. The orphanage at the corner of Rose Hill Street was engulfed in flames. Dozens of firefighters shouted, their voices blending with the sirens and crackling wood. And in the middle of it all, through the smoke, through the chaos, he saw her. Amara. Her small frame stood at the gate of the burning building, screaming something no one seemed to hear. He jumped out of the car before it stopped. "Amara!" he called. She turned, eyes wet, soot on her cheeks. "He's still inside." "What?" "My brother!" she cried. "He's inside! They didn't see him!" The words hit him like a blow. He looked at the flames, then back at her. "You can't go in there," he said, trying to stay calm. "It's too dangerous." Her hands shook. "Please, he's all I have." And for the first time in years, something broke inside the billionaire's chest. Something human, something real. He looked toward the blazing doorway, then at the photograph she clutched in her hands. He remembered his own sister, her cries that night their home burned down, the smoke, the helplessness, the guilt he carried for not saving her. He had promised himself never again. Now he was standing in front of another fire, another little girl, another chance. And he couldn't walk away this time. The smoke clawed at the sky, black and heavy, as sirens screamed through the air. Firefighters rushed across the street, shouting orders, dragging hoses, fighting a losing war against the flames devouring the orphanage. Mr. Grant's eyes burned. The heat hit his face like a wave, but he couldn't move. Not yet. Amara stood beside him, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Her small hands clutched the torn photograph like it was keeping her alive. "Where is he?" Mr. Grant shouted above the roar of the fire. Her voice cracked. "Upstairs, in our room. He was sleeping when the fire started." One of the firefighters turned toward them. "Sir, you can't be here. Get her back." But Mr. Grant didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the second floor, where flames danced through shattered windows. For a second he thought he saw a shadow, a small shape near the corner. He felt Clara's hand grab his arm. "Daniel, don't even think about it." He shook her off, his voice hoarse. "He's a child." "Then let them handle it," she cried. But something in his soul had already made the decision. For the first time in years, Daniel Grant, billionaire, CEO, man of marble and glass, ran straight toward the fire. "Daniel!" Clara screamed. Amara gasped. "He's going in!" The heat swallowed him whole. Inside, everything was smoke, crackling wood, and screaming echoes. His expensive shirt stuck to his skin. The air was poison. But through the chaos, he heard it, faint crying, "Help!" A small voice, trembling and weak. He stumbled toward the stairs, half broken, half burning. He found the boy near the window, curled behind a bed frame, clutching a melted toy car. His face was streaked with tears and ash. "Hey, buddy," Daniel said, his voice rough but soft. "It's okay. I got you." The boy blinked up at him, coughing. "My sister, Amara. She said she'd come back." "She's safe," Daniel said quickly. "Now we need to go, okay?" The ceiling cracked. Sparks fell like rain. He wrapped the boy in his coat and lifted him. The flames bit at his arms. His lungs screamed for air, but he kept moving. Every step felt like walking through a nightmare he thought he'd buried years ago. His mind flashed back to his sister, her hand slipping from his, the smoke, the sound of her name vanishing into the fire. Not this time. He kicked open the back door, stumbled into daylight, and collapsed onto the wet pavement, coughing hard. "Over here!" A firefighter shouted. Hands pulled them both away. The crowd gasped. Clara ran forward. "Daniel! Oh, my God!" Amara broke free from the paramedic's hold and ran straight to her brother. "Eli!" she cried. "Eli!" The boy opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "Mara." She hugged him tightly, sobbing into his shoulder. Daniel sat on the ground, shaking, his suit ruined, his face black with soot. The firefighter clapped his shoulder. "You're lucky to be alive, man. Most wouldn't have made it out." He looked up slowly. His eyes found Amara again. She was still holding that torn photograph. But now, for the first time, she was smiling through her tears. Something inside him cracked open completely. He realized how blind he'd been, living behind glass walls while the world outside burned. Later that night, Daniel stood beside the ambulance as Amara and her brother were checked over. Clara handed him a bottle of water. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "You could have died." He looked at his shaking hands. "I already was," he whispered. "Just slower." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at the children again. "Money builds walls, Clara. I built the tallest one. Thought it would protect me. But it just kept everyone out." A paramedic approached. "They're okay. A little smoke inhalation, but they'll be fine." Daniel exhaled shakily. "Thank God." He walked over to the siblings. Amara was sitting on the back step of the ambulance, her brother's hand in hers. She looked up as he approached. "Mr. Grant," she whispered, her voice small, uncertain. He knelt beside her, his eyes soft now, nothing like the cold man from earlier that morning. "Hey, kiddo, you were brave today." She shook her head. "You were braver." He smiled faintly. "I don't know about that." She hesitated, then pulled the photo from her hand and held it out. "You saved him. You should have this." He looked at the singed edges of the picture, 2 smiling children in front of the orphanage's old swing. "I can't take that," he said gently. "It's yours." She looked down. "It's all I had left from home, but you gave me my brother back. That's worth more than anything." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but couldn't. The little girl's words sank deep into him, cutting through the years of silence and pride and loneliness. He took the photo carefully, like it was made of glass. "Thank you," he said softly, "but I think I'll keep it safe for you. You can come get it any time." Her eyes brightened, hope flickering for the first time. "Can we?" "Of course," he smiled. "You can come by the mansion tomorrow, both of you." Eli tilted his head, curious. "Really? Won't we get in trouble again?" Daniel chuckled, the sound warm and unfamiliar. "Not this time." Amara smiled shyly, her small hand still holding her brother's. "Thank you, Mr. Grant." He looked at her, the same girl he'd once mocked for her dirty shoes, and all he could see now was courage. He stood there for a long time, watching the firefighters pack up, the last embers dying out. Behind him, Clara's voice broke the silence. "You're thinking something." He nodded slowly. "That orphanage. They lost everything tonight. All those kids have nowhere to go." Clara nodded. "Yes, the state will place them somewhere temporary." He turned toward the smoke-filled sky. "No, not temporary." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked at her with new determination in his eyes. "I'm going to rebuild it." Clara blinked. "Daniel, that's—" "I'm serious," he said firmly. "Every brick, every room. Those kids deserve better. They deserve a home." Amara overheard him and whispered to her brother, "He's going to rebuild our home." Eli smiled weakly. "Maybe he's not mean after all." Daniel almost laughed at that. Almost. For the first time in years, he felt peace stir inside him. Something real, something human. But deep down, He knew this was only the beginning. Weeks passed since the fire. The ashes were gone, but the memory of that night still burned inside Daniel Grant's heart. He had returned to the orphanage site every morning. No cameras, no suits, no assistants. Just Daniel in rolled-up sleeves, watching construction crews rebuild what once was a broken dream. Where others saw rubble, he saw second chances. He never told the press. He didn't want applause. He wanted redemption. Amara and Eli visited every day. Sometimes they'd bring sandwiches from the shelter where they were staying temporarily. Sometimes they'd just sit quietly, watching him. The first time Amara saw the new walls going up, she whispered, "It's beautiful." Daniel smiled. "It will be, I promise." One afternoon, as the golden sun bathed the site, Clara walked over holding a clipboard. "The new dormitory's ahead of schedule. You've practically turned this place into a miracle." He chuckled softly. "It's not me, Clara. It's them." He nodded toward the children running through the half-finished courtyard, laughter echoing against fresh-painted walls. "They're the miracle." Amara ran up to him, dirt smudged on her face and her braids bouncing. "Mr. Grant, guess what? They said Eli can start school soon." "That's wonderful," Daniel said, kneeling to her level. "And you?" She smiled shyly. "They said I can too. I used to love reading to the little ones at the orphanage. I want to be a teacher one day." He felt his throat tighten. "Then you will be," he said softly. "You've got more heart than most adults I know." She looked down, embarrassed, then said, "Mr. Grant, I cleaned my shoes today." He blinked, confused for a moment, then saw her small, worn shoes scrubbed until they almost shone. "I didn't want you to think I was dirty again," she said quietly. Something inside him broke. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Amara, I was wrong that day. About you. About everything." Her big brown eyes lifted to his. "You never needed to clean your shoes," he continued. "It was my heart that needed cleaning." She didn't fully understand the weight of his words, but she smiled anyway, the kind of smile that could mend a soul. Behind them, Clara wiped a tear quietly. A few weeks later, the new orphanage opened. The mayor came, journalists came, but Daniel stayed in the background, standing near the back door with Amara and Eli beside him. As the ribbon was cut, Amara whispered, "It's like our old home, but brighter." Daniel smiled. "That's the point. Every dark story deserves a little light at the end." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed, but all he could see was the two children smiling, the ones who had taught him the difference between giving money and giving love. After the ceremony, he took them to a quiet corner under a newly planted tree. He pulled something from his coat pocket. The photo. He handed it to Amara. "I believe this belongs to you." Her eyes widened. The photo was now perfectly restored, laminated, framed, and polished. "You fixed it," she whispered. "I just made sure it lasts," he said. "Like your memories, like your love for your brother." She hugged him tightly, without warning. For a second, he froze. Then he slowly wrapped his arms around her, closing his eyes. Eli tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Grant, are you gonna be our family now?" Daniel looked at him, those same innocent eyes that once stared at death in the fire, and then glanced at Amara, whose smile carried more forgiveness than he thought he deserved. He exhaled deeply. "If you'll let me," he said quietly. From that day forward, Daniel didn't just rebuild the orphanage. He became part of it. Every week he came by with food, books, and sometimes just to listen to the children's stories. He set up scholarships, built a playground, and in the evenings he'd sit on the steps with Amara and Eli watching the sunset. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, Amara turned to him. "Mr. Grant." "Yeah?" Why did you help us after being so mean that day? He looked out at the horizon for a long moment. Because sometimes life gives you one more chance to be the person you should have been all along. And if you're lucky, someone like you shows you how. She leaned her head against his arm. I'm glad you didn't walk away. He smiled softly. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The wind carried the laughter of the other children. The sound was pure, healing, alive. And for the first time in decades, Daniel Grant, the man who once mocked a little girl for her dirty shoes, understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't in his mansion or his cars or his millions. It was in this moment, in kindness, in second chances, in the small, dirty shoes of a little girl who taught him to be human again. Sometimes the smallest people teach the biggest lessons. A kind word, a helping hand, or a single moment of compassion can change a life, and maybe even save one. So before judging someone for what they wear, where they come from, or what they've been through, remember this: you never know what fire they're running from. Because true richness isn't measured by what's in your bank, it's measured by what's in your heart. Just like Daniel learned, we rise higher when we lift someone else. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to just subscribe to our channel, Black Saga. And drop a comment telling us which scene moved you the most, which character inspired you, and where you're watching from. And please, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists, because every share spreads a little more light into someone's darkness.